You got it.
You got it?
We are
Okay.
recording.
7:04, we will call the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. First up is roll call and seating of alternates. And Scott Person is not going to be able to join us tonight. And so Andreas, you are filling in.
Thank you.
Next up is additions or changes to the agenda. So what happened here? It's gonna do.
It's fine. I can see. I can see you guys. The owl is just moving with the sound.
Oh, okay, well, we can't see you anymore. I guess,
Yeah, I was putting the agenda up.
Oh,
want it?
okay.
You want the agenda up there?
not necessary. No? Okay, there we're good. Okay, so next up is additions or changes to the agenda. And Wayne, you know if Mike is gonna be here tonight for the home business?
No, I have no information.
Okay. What I would like to do is in an effort to get through Ryan's stuff quick, so he doesn't have to sit around and listen to all the boring stuff we do later. Move items A, B, and C ahead of old business items B, C, and D. So are there any other changes proposed to the agenda? If not, I make a motion to move the new business items A, B, and C above old business B, C, and D. Second that, thank you, Ann. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Ann? Leanne? Looks like you're muted, Leanne. Testing, Leanne. Might be getting closer. Testing, Leanne. We'll come back here in a minute, Andreas. Patrick? Aye. And I vote aye. Leanne, we got comments with you yet?
Leanne, if not, put your vote in the chat.
Okay, Leanne, if you can hear us, if you turn your video on, you can just raise your hand for a yes vote, or raise your hand when we say no.
I don't think she has a camera on her
Yeah.
computer, that's why that's the phone.
So Leanne indicated in the chat that she seems to be unmuted. I'm not sure what the issue is, but she can see us and I think hear us.
Hello, Leanne, it's Jeff. Is there something we can do to help you get the comms, or else I can just put you on speakerphone here and we can hear you? Okay, well, we aren't hearing you here. I'm gonna just put you on speakerphone so we can get your vote on the approval of the change to the agenda, and then we're gonna go.
About raising my hand, I don't know how I'm gonna speak later if you can't hear me. I can hear and see you, other than what you said about the speakerphone, if that would work. Other than that, I don't think this has happened before, so I don't know what else to do on my end.
No, this is a new challenge, something different, but we got you on speakerphone and we can hear you here.
Okay,
So you vote to amend the agenda.
yes.
And turn your.
It is on.
It might be.
It's,
Feedback.
No, but someone has a speaker.
oh, that speaker.
Oh,
You still hear us out there?
I can, yes.
it's showing your laptop.
Does this-
That speaker is off.
What?
That speaker is off.
You don't want to see it.
Here's now.
You are unmuted.
Okay, well, no, I muted Leanne on the phone and that didn't fix it. We might just have to deal with that.
My,
Anyhow. I'm going on to the next item, which is public speak. And, anybody from the public want to talk about something that's not on the agenda at this point? Okay, hearing none. We're gonna go to old business. And the first up is a certificate of appreciation for Jim. So Jim, come on up here and join me.
When we do that, did we move the, new business up in front of the old?
Yes. But,
But you wanna do that one first?
yeah, there's a, in front of B, C, and D.
Oh, okay. Probably see this.
So we tried to do this last month, all we had was cake, basically, so we'll do it again here, and so. This is from the town of Andover, proclamation, wishing Jim Halsey a well-deserved and happy retirement. Whereas Jim Halsey has been a longtime resident of the town of Andover at Merritt Valley Road. And whereas Jim Halsey has served the town for many years as the town zoning enforcement officer. And whereas Jim Halsey had served the town when needed is the inland, wetland and water course agent. And whereas Jim Halsey has dedicated numerous hours assisting the citizens of the town of Andover in developing applications to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals, resulting in improved quality of life for the citizens of Andover. And whereas Jim Halsey routinely goes above and beyond the call of duty in serving each of the above mentioned commissions and citizens of Andover. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen congratulate Jim Halsey for a job well done in serving the town and its citizens for those many years. Be it further resolved that the Board of Selectmen and the residents of Andover wish Jim Halsey a well-deserved and happy retirement to pursue those other interests he may so desire. In the witness whereof, we have hereto set our hand and caused the seal of the town of Andover to be affixed. This was back on the 15th day of April, 2025. So, thank you very much.
With all you folks, and I appreciate as a resident, I appreciate all the volunteer time that you put in.
or as staff on the over and above time that you put in. Thanks again.
Thank you, Jim.
Take care.
Jim,
Thank you.
thanks for everything you've done.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, next up is going to be receive application and set public hearing date for special permit 2501 71 Bazola Road, Michael Heckler, home occupation with site improvements in the Andover Lake zone. So we have received the application. And I would make a motion that we set the public hearing to take place just before our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be on June 17th. So the public hearing will start at 7 p.m. Looking for a second to that motion. Patrick, second, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for vote. Ann?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Ooh, I think you were coming through the owl that time, not my phone. I'm gonna try and hang up, see how it goes.
I said aye. Is that better?
Yeah, no, that worked out great. I hung up on my cell phone, so, you're coming through well now. Andrea?
I am, okay.
Patrick? Aye. And I vote aye as well. The motion passes to schedule a public hearing on June 17th. And Wayne, you'll have to get with Mike to make sure all the details that I was gonna go over tonight, on that, will go. Next up is to receive application and set public hearing date, special permit 2502. 11 Buckley Hill Road, Fitch Family Farm, Farmers Market, and various other events. I'm gonna discuss item C at the same time for now, which is receive Pitt Family Farm application for a text amendment change to the zoning regulation concerning events such as farmers market and related. So having given some thought on the best way to do this, if we do your special permit application now, we can't do that because we don't have any regulations to base the special permit on. So what I think we will do, we've got 65 days to start the public hearing. Then once the public hearing starts, we've got 35 days to close it, and that normally encompasses 2 meetings. And after that, we have to make a decision within 65 days of closing the public hearing. I don't know that it's gonna take quite that long, but the point is, we can't give you answers to all your questions tonight. And so, it's gonna take a little bit. And what I would like to do is schedule a public hearing on the text amendment to take place just prior to our June 17th meeting. And then set the public hearing for your special permits to take place at the meeting following that, which would be on July 15th. So that's within the 65 days, and that hopefully we would have a good idea of what the text amendment that you're asking for is gonna look like. And then we can apply your special permit to the proposed change and act on there. So with that in mind, I'll make a motion to conduct a public hearing on the text amendment for the agro-tourism regulations prior to the start of our 17 June regular meeting, and a public hearing for the special permit applications for the agro-tourism business to take place on July 15th before the start of our regular meeting then. Looking for a second. And seconds, okay, thank you. Any discussion on that plan? Okay, and so, the way it'll work, we're not gonna talk about the application tonight. We've got to do that in the public hearing forum. So on June 17th, we'll have a discussion on the agro-tourism regs. And I know, Baron, that's why you're here tonight, is you got an interest in that. We'll see how far we get on that. And whether or not we can close it at that meeting. Irregardless of whether we close it at that meeting, I still think we'll be in a position where we can open the special permit public hearing the following meeting and get that going. I just want to try to get the text amendment closed out before we're deliberating on the special permits that are based on the text amendment that we have to have in our books. So Eric's wisdom of trying to get the text amendments done prior to even putting in the special permits for all those other things started ringing through loud and clear as I was trying to figure out the best way to do this and keep the cart on the right side of the horse. But that's where I think we're at. So, Baron, you probably got an interest in both the June and July meetings, and we'll get to hear, your thoughts on how things are going at that point. And I think that is probably, did we vote?
No.
And seconded.
Okay, very good. That was discussion. Okay, yeah, very good. Thank you. Now we'll vote. Ann,
Aye.
Leanne,
Damn it. Aye.
thank you. Andreas,
Aye.
Patrick. Aye. And I vote aye as well. The motion passes 5-0. So no reason for you guys to stick around. We're done on that, and we'll see you next month. Okay, thank you.
Thank
Oh, and so Barrett, you know where to find the information on you've got a copy of the text amendment, the application for tourism regs?
I know.
Okay, so if you go to the planning and zoning website,
Okay.
and if you have trouble getting there, Wayne can help you out. But if you go under applications pending, there'll be a bunch of stuff on the left-hand side there. As you scroll down, it says applications archived. Second one down is applications pending. And I can't remember, well, probably Ryan's is second because he's 25. But you'll see it there, and it's got the text amendment that you probably want to read through, and any other stuff that we get posted as we go along the way. That's where it'll hang out. So if you can't find it, let Wayne know and he'll help you get there.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Any questions, Brian? You're good?
Not just other than the special permit is needed, even if we're changing the language.
Yes.
Both,
Good.
they work
So-
hand in hand.
It does. So we're gonna put some regulations into effect that will set some guidelines for how to do an agro-tourism event. And then you're gonna come to us with the specifics on how you're gonna do the events at your place that comply with those regulations.
Perfect.
Okay, that's it for that.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Next up, get back to old business. Is gonna be the Plan of Conservation and Development, Economic Development Commission. And so, John, I'm gonna turn the discussion over to you. Elaine is here to provide maybe some feedback if I think she was laying on a beach someplace reading your draft, I don't know. And then Patrick can chime in as well from the economic development perspective.
Okay, I'll try to be relatively brief. Hopefully everyone got a chance to look at this. But this is largely a chapter that's drafted based on the outline and focus areas presented by economic development at last month's meeting. I'll just very briefly go through the structure of the outline, and then I'll open it up to comments. So, it's a basic POCD type chapter. This is economic development. based on that guiding principle. A little bit of background, focusing on Andover as a relatively small rural community with obviously Route 6 and the Hop River at the core, and sort of setting up that ongoing challenge of focused development versus focused conservation along that corridor. A little bit of the sort of nuts and bolts economic activity, large current industries, employers, and a little bit of overview of the commuting in and out of Andover. Obviously, the vast majority of folks are commuting out of Andover, and no major particular concentration. A lot of small employers. It talks a little bit about the grand list and some potential development opportunities. There was a focus, or a revisited focus, on the potential redevelopment of the town garage at the core of the community, as an opportunity, and moving the town garage more towards the transfer station site. A little bit more on existing conditions. We talk about zoning. Again, the relatively limited development corridor focused principally around Route 6. Looking at expanding potential uses and encouraging, broader uptake of the developable land along that corridor. And then we get into some of the challenges, again, relatively limited market potential, looking to encourage more flexibility and sort of growing in place. Again, some of these maybe multi-tenant buildings, incubator type situations, as well as looking at the potential of a village district, which is, more mixed use and provides some flexibility while maintaining some design control. And again, looking at growing carefully along the Route 6 corridor because it is the Hop River corridor. And then we get into the 3 core aims and objectives. And again, this is directly from the economic development discussion. The first aim is growing Andover's grand list from within by providing additional development opportunities. And here we do talk about growing in place. It's much easier to encourage the development and growth of existing businesses than it is to recruit any outside businesses. So finding a way from cottage industry and home-based business to, small incubator to, permanent larger scale is really the focus there. Promoting tourism, making Andover a destination. And here we noted the potential for the Rochambeau, leveraging the Rochambeau Trail, and the World Rock, Paper, Scissors Association. And then looking at housing, and then obviously, promoting a destination as for natural resources as well. And then promoting housing as economic development, because it is a very attractive community to live in, and housing is also grand list. Housing is also growth, and leveraging that and leaning into Andover's reputation as a very positive place to live and raise a family, can be a key point of economic growth. And then we detail, I believe it's 19 action items that basically draw from those 3 core principles. And I won't leave those all. I won't read them all, but I'll leave that up on the screen for a moment, so we can look. But hopefully everyone, again, got a chance. And I would invite Elaine and the EDC folks first crack at this.
Sure, I'll pipe in. I absolutely loved it. It's the first time that all of our discussions seem to have made it on the list. Thank you, John. You did an excellent job. I don't know about putting in the POCD specifics, like about the rock, paper, scissors thing in Rochambeau, more
Okay.
put in as public activities or something like that, to tie in our history with Rochambeau. Because people get stuck on stuff like that. They're going, what are they talking about? When it comes to public hearings and people approving things, I just, thought maybe genericize it a little bit more, but it gets into the agritourism and trying to tie in our history, which is great. I love it. And actually, I wasn't on a beach, Jed. We did 7 national parks in 7 days with Nevada and Utah and Colorado. And we just flew in. We got to Bradley at 9 o'clock this morning. So I'm running on fumes, but I definitely wanted to say I read through all of these and I think they're great. Thanks.
Thank you, Elaine. Patrick,
I second that.
okay?
Yeah. And I have one minor correction to the businesses. The MTM business had a description after it in the current local businesses, and it's fixtures and machine tools.
Where, okay, so,
Page 2.
oh, right here, yep, providing MTM.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
because
MTM is-
that's actually networking. That it's like that's what network does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think you have that in there too. I mean, it
Oh,
was
I think
probably a
yeah.
cut and paste thing, but
Or something, yeah.
And, okay, and so network does the services for intellectual disabilities and providing connections to healthcare?
yeah, yes.
Okay. All right, so let's move that.
Yeah, I was surprised. I said, "Really? That's what they do?" And I'm like, "No,
And
no."
and I'm sorry, so how should we describe MTM would be the best?
Their business signage reads precision fixtures and tooling. It's a machine shop.
Okay.
Tool and die, yeah.
Great, okay.
Okay,
I would actually call that precision machining,
sure.
because I think most people
Sure.
don't really understand what fixtures and tooling is, and they
Yeah.
understand what machining is.
Perfect.
Yeah, so if it's not bathroom fixtures, I'm lost. Okay, great.
Thanks.
For, the commission, Ann, do you have any thoughts on it?
I thought this was great, especially the, thing here showing how the Connecticut general statutes have, I think regulations about, allow the zoning commissions to adopt regulations to create the village districts. And this stuff I thought was just fantastic, as well as all of the action items. Really, really good.
Okay, we'll sign them all to you. Yeah. Leanne, what you think?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I just have a question for clarification about the term developable land and, possibly starting a separate fund for it.
Okay,
Okay, what's your question?
so
Can you still
that's,
hear me?
yes,
Okay, would that be something that, would this be something, a fund that the town would purchase and develop for any one of the uses? You know, I'm not picking one now, but any one of the uses, that's cited here, whether it's mixed use or housing or, how would that work?
yeah, so the idea would be, similar to where the town's setting aside funds to acquire and maintain open space. A number of communities have developed their own business parks, where the town is essentially the developer. They would, do a subdivision or put in a little cul-de-sac with, a few buildings that could be developed that could sell as pad sites. But it's that's an option, or the town could, if the town wanted to if on a single parcel build, a potential multi-tenant building and be essentially a landlord, that's an option too. I mean, some of those things can be complex administratively. And so a number of communities basically just develop a business park and sell off, the pad sites, but, because they control the land, it's easier to, put in the type and scale of development that you're looking for. But yeah, no, I mean, it's essentially, opportunities for the town to be a developer to facilitate development. And I don't know, Elaine, if you are.
Yeah, if I can pipe in a little bit. I know when the Yukon Landscaping course, came in and did all of their plans for development of different areas in town for recreational use and multifamily use and smaller community use and community center use, things like that. They were supposed to concentrate on town-owned land. And it was kind of interesting because one of them concentrated on that, I don't know if it's the Bulk property over above the river, you know, over the river from the church, as developable, but it's not town-owned. And they came up with a great plan for development for, you know, that we really liked, but the reality was, well, we don't own it. It's not our land. But wouldn't it be nice if somehow we could control what goes on that property? And so that gets into the discussion of maybe as things become available, we can go ahead and take control of some of that property and actually put some of these really neat plans in process. You know, we wouldn't be spending the money to do any of the work. We'd have to get somebody to do it. But just, you know, whether our own town-owned land is sufficient enough to handle the development that we need is another question. But just leaving it open for the next 10 years to look at, to consider. So, I mean, we got to look at the POCD as for the next 10 years, this is something we should be looking into. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Leanne, did you have something else?
No.
Okay, and again, you know, Elaine, you're probably aware, you know, we tried putting a little money, a token amount in the budget for, you know, open space funding, putting aside for that. And, you know, so we were looking at 50,000, Board of Selectmen cut it in half, Board of Finance, you know, cut the rest of it. I guess they went back, after we, moaned, on that and, you know, I think, what was it, 10,000 was the final number? Correct. Yeah, so, I love the thought, but.
Yeah. No, I know. I watched all those meetings, Jed, and
And-
saw
yeah,
where
okay,
things were
yeah,
getting
everything,
cut.
so, Andrea, do you have any comments on that?
My only, you know, thought process is around the inns, the hotels that you guys thinking about bringing in, which I don't think it's,
Hotels?
yeah. I mean, have we looked at some of the surrounding motel, I would say performance or vacancy or the type of people that maybe even live in there? Have you?
Yeah, like the Tolland Inn, it's one of the highest end places you could stay in Connecticut.
Where's it at, yeah?
Tolland Inn,
In
Yeah, I mean,
town?
yeah.
Okay.
but I mean, you know, this is like, we're not talking about Route 6 motels, we're talking about, you know, high-end tourism kind of, not motel, but an actual inn, like, you know, given the opportunity. You know, obviously, we can put that in the zoning.
Yeah.
So it's just to put it out there, there's no official place to stay other than somebody's house or an Airbnb.
Airbnb, yeah.
So, you know, if we're gonna try and attract tourism to our town to get, you know, tourist money, then it'd be nice to have somewhere for them to stay. And, you know, like, we could probably be pulling in people that would have to stay near UConn.
Yeah.
Right, so. That's because it goes hand in hand with it, you know, well, we're gonna say, hey, come to Andover because it's great and walk our trail, but. Is there a campground or is there, you know, not yet, there is a provision for campgrounds in our current regs, but it's very small, so. That's the
Yeah,
thought process.
yeah,
basically, yeah.
gotcha. It's not something, let's just put a hotel on side of Route 6.
Not like putting in a.
Right, we're not-
Hampton Inn,
That's-
something. small.
Right, or even,
Right.
even a small one. It reminds me of one in, Columbia. If you drive there, it's just like, there's nobody there, you know, I've never seen.
Oh, no.
Little
Yeah.
tiny
You know,
one,
But it's not
66.
that far from here, you know, so
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
definitely,
Just,
Yeah, no, I know, it's-
that's good questions, you know, like.
I know there's a lot of Airbnbs on Columbia Lake, I mean, I see them, they're expensive, you know, for sure. But I don't know what would attract tourism, you know, I mean, yeah, we have the Agent Orange, we have the trails, but is that, it's like a day trip kind of thing, isn't it? Or do you guys see any or get any feedback as to people like, hey, I really wanna stay a week or a weekend in Andover, or is this just something that they stop by and?
Well, people used to a long time ago, and that's what, you know, we revisited the cottage industries, we revisited the home-based businesses, the stuff that worked here. In the past, right, so.
I mean, I'm all for campgrounds, like I always like KOAs and all that
Yeah.
stuff, I think they're great, you know, this would be like, it's nice, but you need, usually it's by a lake or something, or some kind of water.
Yep.
The lake association here is tough, so.
So I wouldn't totally discount using the trail to drive tourism. Because I've seen a bunch of examples where that can work really well. You know, and drive really big numbers, like the C&O Trail coming out of Washington DC is an example. National Park Service says now that 100,000 people a year bike the whole length of the C&O Trail, which is about 190 miles, and the average person spends 5 days doing it. So, and the majority of them are bed and breakfasting it and moteling it, not staying in the campgrounds alongside the trails. So, and having seen the Hop River Trail and the extension, the Airline Trail as part of the East Coast Greenway, we have an awesome asset. We're just not really, we're using it for local recreation, but you're not seeing a ton of through recreation. And to get through recreation, you need to establish places for people to stay. And then enough trailside amenities that they can get water and stuff like that. And I think that would be, going forward, that's something the town's gonna have to look at, whether that's in the next 10 years or the next 20 years. Certainly as the East Coast Greenway gets completed. I mean, you know, I've talked to probably 4 through cyclists on the trail in the last month. One
Just a big bike event this past weekend,
yeah,
Saturday, I think it was,
yep.
all kinds of guys biking.
One, Bill Penn, local resident, just finished, I think he's finishing in Maine today or tomorrow. He just through rode that from Key West to Maine. And I talked to, 3 other people that I just randomly saw on the trail that were doing the whole length of the majority of it. So it is coming. It's coming slowly, I think, but it will be there. And areas like Pennsylvania with the trail called the Great Allegheny Passage, you know, the Virginia Creeper Trail, the Greenbrier Trail, a lot of communities that have embraced it have done well with it. So I think long-term, that's something the town should consider. And I appreciate the emphasis in economic development related to trailside development. Yeah, that's good.
I tend to think the idea of an inn or something more than just an Airbnb would be useful just for us. I mean, I've got family that wanna come and visit, but we don't have room anymore. And it's like, where do we put them? Well, you drive 10 miles that way to Willimantic, or you drive 10 miles that way to Manchester to get a place to stay. So I think something locally would really be good for even the local residents.
And I think the B&B would work better than probably a hotel in the
Yeah.
area.
So that'd be a good small scale item.
So we do have that, so we noted in number 7, if you can see that, I can make it bigger. That, so we, you know, working on the regulations to allow for inns and larger beds and breakfasts. I don't know if we want to have a discussion of Airbnbs at this point, but, you know, certainly something a little bit larger than an Airbnb, smaller than a hotel, you know, is really the focus, kind of the butter zone there.
He's right on.
Right, and I had also mentioned in the past, we've got a unique situation where we've got the Agent Orange Memorial, and there aren't that many of them So for veterans and their families who want to come just pay their respects, just to see it, it would be nice if there was a little place that they could stay in the area.
Okay, well, I got quite a few comments, actually. I liked a lot of what's there, but I guess the thought that I had is I read through this with the action items. And so I'm almost reluctant to talk tonight because I got my feelings hurt when I read through all this stuff about the zoning regs. And Eric's probably got his feelings a bit hurt because he came up with a wall. I didn't. I was just here, but I thought most of the things that we were suggesting changes to, we probably had covered in a couple of different places in our regs. And so it didn't surprise me that economic development folks would look at it and say zoning's the issue. I'm sitting here looking, no, zoning's not the issue. We got that covered.
Yeah.
We need to get the people in here. We got, property for sale right now and nobody's coming in to develop it. So somewhere in the middle of all that is probably the truth. And there was a discussion about working together, and that would make, action item number 20 is maybe we should, and I think quarterly might have been too often. There for a while, we were getting together and, Eric, the Economic Development Commission and me just talking about things. And it seemed like a lot of the things we were talking about there, our regulations covered it. It just takes a while before you get familiar enough with it to understand them, to say, oh yeah, that's what that's all about. And we'll get into some of that a little bit here. But I thought those meetings were pretty good and helpful. And we should probably do it again. Maybe not, certainly not monthly, but at some periodicity, we ought to do that. But going right back up to the start, in the background, I was surprised that something in the background paragraph did not talk about the lack of infrastructure. And, we've got two action items. One was on high-speed internet or something. And I thought, my internet at home, blazing fast. So I don't know if we've got that one done or not, but we've got another action to consider sewers. And again, I'm looking ahead to the 824 referral, and I'm looking for something in here that says economic development's being hindered because we don't have sewers. And I don't know how true that is, but it would at least give us something to say consistent with the P O C D if we ever were lucky enough to go that way.
So I'm sorry. So Jed, is your position that the town should be open to that concept?
I think it should. I know economic development thinks it should. I've heard that there was some discussion about that with the Board of Selectmen. I think the cost is too high, but if the state said, or the federal government said, we're gonna pay to put sewers in so you guys can build some affordable housing, okay, I'm good with that. I don't think, it's kind of up there with putting aside money for the town to have developable land. I think the survey we did, the town people weren't all keen on that, and I keep seeing evidence of that with the open space funding stuff and that too. Money's tight, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. And
Okay.
If that would help. I don't know if it would or not, but I think that was the conclusion that the economic development folks were coming up with. And if that is, then it should be in there so that we can reference it.
So we do have action item number 4 is looking at small package and alternative wastewater systems. Do we want to be a little bit more broad about that and investigating?
It was further down on your list there in
Number 6.
Number 6. Oh yeah, there you go. Yep.
I just want to be able to tie that back to something in the discussion that says we
Okay.
need it.
Yep.
So we put in action to do it.
Okay, got it.
in the next paragraph down on economic activity, I was pleasantly surprised to read that there are a total of 228 businesses registered in Andover. I thought that was a very high number. Pleased to see 28 new businesses coming in 2024. I went to the website to take a look at the listing that of businesses in the town there that encompass most, you know, a lot of home businesses and some of the bigger ones too. I don't recall that I saw Dollar General on there. I know there's a couple of, so one of the action items is update that listing. But where are the, you know, there was 82 things on the list on the EDC website. Where's the other 200?
Yeah, no, you're right, Jed, and we are working on it actively. We do have a new one that we're going to be putting out very shortly that encompasses a lot more. We're also breaking out the fact, you know, just the people selling eggs, just the people with the little farm stands, the people
Okay.
with farms, with the horses, things like that. You know, which don't normally show up on like a business directory. So, you know, but we are definitely working on that. We know it needs work.
I didn't know where John got the 228 number. That was,
I know.
that's great news. I mean, that's almost
Yeah,
one
that-
business per family.
I think that's a Secretary of State number, you know, the number of, so it's, you know, so anyone that sets up an LLC, I think, you know, counts towards a business
Okay,
in town. So, yeah. But, and so we're going to add a note in there that, you know, many of these businesses are very, very small, you know, home-based or what have you, or small, you know, single person LLCs or what have you, but we'll just
Yeah.
as a note.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly nothing you would put on a business directory or go ahead and put on MapQuest, you know, because it's nothing that people would be visiting, going to. But there is an awful lot of stuff going on in town that just isn't gonna show up on a business directory.
okay, no, that's great. One of the things that I am trying to set the stage for, and you talked about it in here, is the lack of incubator. Lack of facilities for when the home businesses get a little bit too big for being at home, and they need to go to the business parks and that kind of stuff. And so I said, well, if we got 228 home businesses here, we need to get those on our list, because each one has to give us $50 a year. And we're missing some money. But I do like the thought of having the ability for when these businesses grow to have some place to grow in Andover. And there are properties available that can be used for that. So I didn't necessarily agree with the fact that we needed to identify more properties. I thought we needed to get somebody to come in and develop the ones we have, and that would be a good use. Yeah, and I also like the thought that housing is its own economic development, you know, and we didn't specifically mention the senior housing, which we have a specific section in our regulations to allow the more dense housing there. But I think, you know, people wanting to stay in Andover with, you know, downsizing to the smaller houses, smaller lots is a great opportunity. And John, I've got all these in the comments here. I just didn't want to send them out because I wanted to hear what everybody else thought before I opened my big mouth there.
Okay.
Going back to the economy, the top industries chart you had there. Are all those jobs, are all those jobs in Andover? No, they're back on page 1.
Oh, okay.
That chart. Those were all jobs that are located in Andover,
I believe that's right.
because, you know, I was, again, I guess I was shocked to see 304 government jobs in Andover. We certainly don't have them working here at the town hall. yeah, I didn't know if that was like teachers, fire department, I didn't know what all that was, but 55% of them are state government. And I thought that the rest of the items on that chart were probably all located in town here. But when over half the jobs are government jobs, and half of those are state government, that didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, so the industry share, there's, yeah, the, and my colleague Jeremy put these numbers together, and he explained to me what that means, or total jobs, yeah, total jobs within Andover. So that 50, the share of industry column has a different explanation that I need to get from Jeremy that we discussed, but I can't remember how to explain it.
So, like
yeah.
at the bottom there where it says, accommodation and food service, and then it said, food service and drinking places are 97% of the 32 there, right? Okay, I thought that was probably, you know, Andover Pizza and Dunkin'
Right.
Donuts and that kind of stuff here in town, where 97% were, almost all of them are food, not so much accommodation, because I don't know that we got too many bed and breakfasts.
Right, exactly.
There, but anyhow, that government number just kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So
Didn't see it.
yeah. Unless it's associated with Gay City or some state, state resource.
Yeah, and I think, John, these aren't necessarily, these are the jobs that residents hold. They don't necessarily do
Right.
them
Yeah. Good
here
point. Right. Exactly.
in Andover.
So yeah, no, if you look at the, because the
Because
number
on
of
the
jobs.
next page, show all these people, 1,582 people leaving town to go work someplace.
Exactly.
It
Right.
didn't
This-
all flow.
Right. So there's less than 400 jobs in Andover itself.
Yep.
So yeah, there are a number of people that working for the state living in town.
So, yeah. Something,
Agriculture doesn't make a sector?
Do we have?
It's probably no, I mean, because I would think my suspicion is that most of the people making their money in agriculture in Andover, that's not their primary employment. That they have other sources of income. There, the number of people that
yeah,
are
especially if we're counting the guy putting the egg stand out in front of the house.
right. Or, I imagine even if in Fitch, Fitch probably has a number of seasonal employees, but the number of actual full-time employees working on their tree farms is pretty limited, I would imagine.
One of the things when we were talking about, the need, well, we'll get there, I guess. I didn't have any comments on page 2, I guess. On page 3, where we've got job counts by places, and it's got cities, CDPs, etc. I didn't know what a CDP was.
It's a census designated place.
Say again?
Census designated place.
Okay,
If you want, we could add that to.
but at least it'll give me a hint on looking it up. I couldn't find anything when I was trying to figure out what a CDP was.
It's like New Britain is a city, Middletown is a city, whereas Glastonbury Center, that doesn't qualify as a city, it's a.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like Rockville is a census designated place within the municipality of Vernon.
Okay. So we say right below that chart, currently the commercial share of the grant list is just 3%, leaving residential property owners to contribute a majority of the town revenue. Certainly true statement, no thought there. I thought we had some pretty good discussions by Eric of how small the contribution to the town is by, something like Dollar General. And so I don't know that we can ever expect the development that we want in town to significantly offset the grant list for what the residents are doing. In my mind, the answer is, and I don't even want a lot of this for the town, but the answer is more residential construction. That's our economic development, and we don't want to get, you know, we don't want to get clustered or constrained or any of that kind of stuff, but from what I heard about the revenue that Dollar General is bringing in, I just don't see where we're gonna do that with development. You know, I remember when the Millstone Power Plant got built down in Waterford, wow, they couldn't spend the revenue fast enough that they were bringing in from that thing. But, you know, we're not gonna bring Millstone up here. We tried with the gas infiltration plant, and that didn't go.
They shut down those. They promised low electric,
Yeah,
bills and it ended up backfiring because they're shutting down, just, Millstone, you know. They had all kinds of issues, so, you know, it wasn't even operational at one point.
well, it is now.
It is now, but they had
We're
all
paying
kinds-
for it.
Yeah,
But anyhow, so I'm not convinced that we've got the ability to grow the grant list with businesses in that.
I guess I feel like businesses aren't necessarily to develop the grand list, but they're services for the people of the
that-
town to
Yes,
use.
so when we get more
And the
people here,
convenience.
or we look at the
Yeah.
seniors in town, you know, seniors, growing population, what are the little shops that we can put in
Right.
to do that?
I was just amazed when we moved to town 20 years ago and there wasn't a bank.
Well, there was a bank,
Well, that
But
was
it
before my
failed.
time,
Yeah.
yeah.
right,
Yeah,
there was a hairdresser, and it failed. And there were some breakfast places, and they failed,
I
you
think,
know, just never supported it successfully.
everybody wants it, they don't show up to
Well-
keep the business going.
you gotta remember, Route 6 is a artery, that's,
yeah,
people drive through
I
it, you
know.
know, and you got that little plaza on the side, it's. How many businesses have failed? The donut shop was great, I loved it, failed. There was something else failed, you know. It's not very appealing, I wouldn't really pull in there,
yeah.
you know,
Go to Andover Pizza, that's about it.
not the
Um,
best pizza either, I mean, I went there once.
Pizza and the liquor store.
Yeah.
Liquor store
been
does
there
great,
since
yeah,
the
that-
I think the
70s.
pizza's pretty good, decent too, but,
Uh,
things like over Andover. That is a great little place.
Yep.
And it's got its own little niche, you know, it's different from all the other stuff. And I think that kind of thing is what's great. If we could get more little things in town like that.
I like, you know, it hurts to have the Christmas tree farm scaling down, you know, I love that Christmas tree farm out on Route 6. And I always had this vision of some Hallmark festival going on out there or something, and, we'll see where we go on this agritourism thing, but I didn't see a chart in here, and I think it's in the last P O C D that talked about what are the businesses that contribute the most to the town revenue. And if I recall, on the chart on the last P O C D, there were a couple of private properties that were, you know, in the top 5 or whatever, and, I thought it would be helpful, nowhere in this report does it talk about the self-storage thing, which I think is probably a thriving little business. I don't know what it adds to us, doesn't have a lot of employees, but,
corporate.
but I was looking for a chart on who is providing the most, so that we have, some rationale for making a decision about how beneficial economic development would be there.
Yeah, so the old town profiles produced by what was used to be CERC and is now Advanced CT used to have the top 5 grand list contributors, taxpayers. Their municipal profiles no longer have that. So I mean, we could do a little digging on it. I mean, we could just ask the assessor.
I think that would be, I think when we talk economic development, that's what you need to know. What do
Okay.
we want to get so that it brings the biggest bang for the buck into the town? There's gotta be something that, you know, the town will support too, but anyhow, that'd be that.
Well, that's always the rub, is that the buildings, or the businesses that are likely to make significant increases in the grand list are not necessarily businesses people want in
Yep.
their town. I
Exactly.
mean, you could put a trash to energy plant, you know, in town, and it would bring in all kinds of revenue, you know? But the residents would be quite unhappy with you.
Yep.
So from my perspective, I've always thought things like lawyers, doctors' offices, stuff like that would fit this town nicely.
Yep.
The one thing I would say about residential development, I would actually check the numbers to see whether the taxes from residential development is sufficient to pay for increased attendance at our schools.
Well, that's why I like the senior, the senior housing, because,
I would say
it
seniors.
doesn't contribute to that, and it brings.
Back at my old job, we used to trot around statistics that would say town makes more money off open space than it does a residence. The town benefits more. Now that's, my old job was Department of Agriculture, so we would maybe say things like that, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are cost of community services studies, you know,
Right.
sort of talk about that.
Services-
Yeah.
Services a resident takes.
I'm ready for page 4, I think. Yeah, right below the zoning thing, that paragraph there. You know, it talks about business zones allow certain uses, typically those thought to be less intense by site plan review, others more intense, special permit. No residential uses are currently allowed in the business zone. And it goes on, the current regulations include a maximum floor area of 15,000 square feet for individual buildings and a maximum of 50,000 square feet for shopping centers in the B zone. For reference, a typical modern supermarket is approximately 40,000 square feet. And so, you know, I remember when the Dollar General site plan review came to town. And there was nobody who was saying, oh yes, we want a bigger Dollar General with no oversight. You know, every comment that came in was, how dare you guys allow this store to come into town and not have a special permit? That was my takeaway from that experience. And when we look at 50,000 square feet, like that's not big enough. That's 5 Dollar Generals sitting next to each other in a row. And, you know, when we talk about these little doctor's offices and that kind of thing, I'm hard pressed to come up with what a better number than a maximum of 50,000 square feet would be. I think it's a pretty reasonable number. I kind of like the regulation that we've got, and I think it strikes a fairly good balance. So,
Yeah,
That was
I don't think we're making a judgment call on that one. We're just noting it.
say again, John?
I don't think this paragraph was, you know, passing judgment on the maximum square footage. I
No.
think it just noted it.
Well, it certainly, to me, read, we need to allow bigger development. And that was a theme throughout here, bigger development. And I don't know that that's what the people want. And as I say, you know, I don't know how much development in the 15 years I've lived in Andover. The only two I recall are Dollar General and the gas infusion plant. And nobody wanted either of them. You know, Dollar General came in because our regulations allowed it, but the people were thinking that, you guys screwed up the regulation there. That should have been way smaller than 10,000 square feet or 15,000 square feet to allow these to come in with site plan. So that's that's from the zoning perspective, pushing back. I know economic development wants economic development. But I think, I think the numbers we got there are okay. That's just my perspective. I guess we can talk about that more, but that's what I thought reading through there. Same thing with the, the industrial zone.
You don't mention, do you mention the mixed use?
Oh, no, we'll get there. We'll get there. So,
Okay,
the last paragraph on that page, the commission should review types of businesses allowed. And I asked myself, what commission? Is that the Economic Development Commission or is that the Planning and Zoning?
oh, no,
Commission?
no, I know, I think, yeah, I think planning and zoning, I think, yeah, that's,
Oh, see, I thought it should be economic development. They should be telling us what kind of businesses we want, and we'll take a look at it. And certainly we can work together on that. But again, as I read through our regulations, I think they're pretty good. I'm not that unhappy. We might need to tweak it a little bit, kind of like adding the agro-tourism piece there, but
Right.
Quick question, have we looked at the personal experience, right? I have to drive 15-20 minutes to get to a grocery store. Dollar General does help, it's clean, I tell them all the time, you guys do a great job with that. Some interesting characters that stop there. Besides that, another thing is going to pediatrics. We got lucky in Hebron that we got a pediatric there, but before that I was driving a plane trip. So I really like that whole idea of professional development here for lawyers, pediatricians. Because if you wanna grow families here, you wanna have pediatricians to be coming in here.
yeah,
Or, visiting nurses, association, I know there's one down there, maybe if you wanna develop, 55 and over, so.
I think it's gonna be a hard sell getting those guys to come here because the population base here doesn't support them like it does in Manchester, Glastonbury, Willimantic,
I
whatever.
think parts of Hebron would support it. Trickling down instead of, because we go to Hebron now.
Yeah,
But if it can kind of develop it here somehow and keep
yeah,
that,
maybe, certainly,
yeah,
certainly that is the kind of development the people of the town want here.
yes, yes.
Whether or not we support it enough to keep them in business, that's a different thing.
That's another thing.
We all want the small mom and pop hardware store. But the shoppers all go out to Home Depot. And they drive 15 miles, but they go 5 miles to Hebron to go to
I go to both.
hardware store. Okay,
Yeah.
anyhow, that's that.
That is true, and the other reality is today, with the ability to buy from Amazon,
That's
and
right.
have things delivered in a day and a half.
Same day, so it's,
Small retail is
getting harder.
is getting harder. Yeah,
That's why the
Yeah.
professional things are better.
Well, we brought over Andover, and those nichey things,
Yeah.
antique, stuff like that. But there again, it's how do you get them to,
I'm surprised there's no breakfast places here. I mean,
There used to
I
be.
know Bill's, that little.
Used to be in Andover Plaza.
Yeah, the farm.
Tom's.
But, yeah, Tom's, he's grown and he's good.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, he
I
had a
always-
picnic table.
and he's got a nice car, so he's probably doing good, but I
Yeah,
mean,
he is, he does good food, yeah.
when you develop something that's gonna be a village kind of like atmosphere and putting a little diner in there, I think that would attract people, tourism, especially locals. Breakfast place has always done good, but it's the location, right? If it was in that rundown plaza.
That was my
Yeah,
problem
okay.
with that place that was in the plaza. I went there once or twice. It was like, oh, this place is
Yeah,
run down. It was cold.
Yeah.
And it just didn't have a nice layout or vibe, so that turned
well, the
me.
parking lot was full of potholes and then, you don't wanna pull in there, so. When you develop
We
something
need
like that, you gotta
something
make sure that you got
improved.
nice shrubbery and nice, this, we can walk around.
that's good on
some
Thursday and
benches.
Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that the economics of small strip malls are super tough.
Mhm.
I mean, that's why you see so many of them closing everywhere. It's
And I don't think they're, you know. They're barely hanging on. I mean, their anchor tenant really is the pizza parlor and the liquor store. And the liquor store used to be where the grocery store was, but, you know, people buy a lot more liquor than they buy food from the local vendors, so.
And we'll see if the full place will survive, that from East Hartford, you know, they do pretty good there, but I don't know, in this town, not sure.
Interested to see a year from now, are
Yeah.
they still there? Because, you know,
Yeah.
again, that's what the people of town want. But you gotta go support it if you really want it. Saying what you want, doing two different things.
But another observation, the dance school right there, I've seen a lot of cars, you know, so that's, I mean, there's an appetite for that, for small families with kids.
Yeah.
Something like that, right, maybe a gymnast area to develop, or
Yeah.
swimming.
You
know,
can't do
often-
Amazon on that one.
No,
gotta
you can't,
have
and
the
Amazon
kids
too is getting a bad rep, it's just right up the road, 2 miles from here, there was a guy who delivered his Amazon stuff. Took a picture of it and stole it, right, it was right on camera, so that's starting to hit locally.
there. Wow.
So people are gonna get turned off sooner or later.
Mhm. The Amazon driver.
The drive, 3 miles from here.
But in terms of the size of buildings. I think I'm probably the only person here that was on the zoning commission. When those limits were established, and that was specifically to prevent. You know, intrusion of big box stores into town, not that I thought it was likely that we were going to do it, but clearly the residents didn't really want that. So that's what that was, those limits were established to kind of prevent anything bigger than, say, a Highland Park Market.
Mhm.
And I don't know how many square foot Highland Park Market is, but you know, that is a nice kind of store. I think it's about equivalent to the size of Dollar General, maybe a little bit bigger than that.
I mean, if you look at South Glastonbury, there's a little grocery store there that does really well, it's owned by a respected family. And it's inside
Is
a
that
little,
Highland Park there at the corner of
There's a
83 and
Highland Park.
94?
is that a Highland Park?
Yeah.
South
South
Glastonbury?
last, that's a different name. Yeah, I know.
Different name, but very small, I used to live there,
Not
so,
at 17.
yeah. It's similar to this town, and it's a little bit richer, but,
Oh, I know what you're talking about, that's right,
Right.
from,
yeah,
the coffee place.
coffee place, yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay, well, I'm gonna move down to the top of page 5. And it's got the commission again should consider levels of review required for each zone. And I think that's probably planning and zoning commission. The very first word there is commission, it should be BZC. Let's see, we talked about, in that same paragraph, likewise, there may be uses more suited to site plan approval with certain provisions which may be easier to obtain for some applicants. Again, the feedback from the Dollar General experience was the people in town are happy to have a voice. And yes, that's consistent with, we tried doing some charter changes to that were perceived to take away some of the voice of the town people, and they didn't like that. They want to have their say, and I think they want that with these stores that coming in too. Next paragraph down, the opportunity for the town to capitalize the need for small incubator spaces as well as need for contractor storage and warehousing. Through the adoption of regulations allowing for mixed-use commercial industrial buildings and working with established developers market, the town can see grand list growth while allowing new businesses to establish themselves, others to grow in place. I think our regulations allow that now. I don't know why that would be what the hindrances to that. And
Yeah.
in fact, we've got the mixed use thing that would allow us to put housing on top of some of those offices and that kind of stuff, which, we have there too. So I think the zoning regs are, if they need a tweak, I'm not aware of what it is yet. I think we're okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, yeah, I think this is, and Jeremy had gone through those. I think maybe some of those was a interpretation about a certain particular type of development, but we'll go back and review that and make sure that they fit what we were looking at.
Yeah, and I also want to pipe in on that because the dance hub was mentioned. And I know the dance hub, they don't have enough space there at Andover Plaza to do their business. And Stephanie wants to expand. But if you have more of a, I'm calling it a warehouse or an open space kind of building for a dance hall, that's the kind of stuff, as opposed to just incubator space, but just a space that will allow a dance studio with space to go ahead and do that. Because I hate to say it, but I think Stephanie's going to have to leave town to expand her business. And that would, I know the town of Andover would be very sad to see that happen. So this is a lot of why we're bringing up, wouldn't it be nice if we had this kind of space for something like that to move into? That's all.
And we got a couple of those properties on the market now, we just can't get a developer in to build those things, and I think the, small, business park models, to allow these home businesses that are growing, kind of like the dance studio there, we've got a market for them, we just can't, I think we have a market for it.
Yes.
We convinced any developer to take the risk on putting something in place to do it, but the property's available.
It's too bad we don't have like an old mill.
Yeah, well,
Just
yeah,
like
the old
the
mill to
Falmouth
put
Mill.
in to make apartments out of it, all that kind of stuff. That's
Apartments
great.
or-
We have nothing like that.
Breweries would come in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We talked about feedback from the Dollar General, wanting less site plan approval.
Yeah, there is no brewery in this.
Really, bro.
Well,
You
there's
gotta go down to Williamsburg and the Manchester.
Well, yeah, Willie Brew.
a couple other ones that are popping up. It's very popular.
The farm breweries are, what I was thinking of. Plant some hops and call it a farm and put a brewery on there.
Next paragraph down, we talked about, the economic development business directory and listing of businesses, which I think is great. I just think, it needs an update, and maybe there could be an action to, do that. Yeah, coming down, and I think we've already got the action item here. The Planning and Zoning Commission should continue to have active dialogue with EDC in an effort to continue to make improvements to the regulatory environment to encourage the growth of business in Andover. And that was that EDC, PZC, town manager little meeting that we had there. But again, I'm not aware of anything that's not coming to town because our regulations wouldn't do it and the people wouldn't want it. So again, I thought the regulations weren't the problem. I don't know what the problem is for sure, but our regulations support doing pretty much what we want to do.
So if a developer wants to, if we can present them, hey, these businesses are looking for expanded space, like the dance school and maybe a brewery wants to come in into a bigger building, right? Present that to the developer and say, these businesses are ready to sign up to, for bigger space, so, here it is. If we can put something like that together.
Yep.
Present it to the developer, I think that would go.
Well, and so two, for instances there, when we, when Ryan Fitch first put the Christmas tree on this side of, Route 6 for sale, we got together with them and we talked about mixed use development and all this kind of stuff that would be perfect in there. And I don't know, that it ever went any further than that. The other example is over at Lindholm Corners. There's a bunch of property right on Route 6 that would be great for mixed use development. The guy, came talking to us a couple of times, and when it finally, we said, okay, yes, let's pursue this and go out, do it. Never heard from the guy again. And so the property is there, we need something else, but I don't think it's changing the zoning regs. I think the zoning regs are pretty, okay. Now, maybe, you know, and I worry about me being can't see the forest for the trees because I've been in the trees so long there now. But I really think that, and it took me a while to figure out how to use these things like mixed use floating zone, but I think our regulations have a lot of flexibility that we're not taking advantage of. So.
When I look at the map here, of the business and the industrial zones, and it's just all around on Route 6. Yet we talked about having like the village zone thing, that would be more like maybe Center Street or something down 316, and that, the zoning there doesn't apply for that, doesn't allow for it.
We have a village zone identified already next to the library.
Oh, next to the library.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
not on that map.
No, it's not. So I'm wondering whether we need to do something with the zoning regs.
Well, cause except for the firehouse property, the rest of the property it's on Center Street there, in Ultra 16 is already houses.
Yeah,
So they'd have to be converted, which he did address, but, you know, when I first was on economic development 10 years ago, we wanted to find an area in town where we'd have a business park that doesn't need commercial signage and it's not retail businesses, you know, like the stuff we've been talking about, a lot of it tonight. It doesn't have to be on Route 6.
no,
And so that's why we're just putting it in there, like, we recommended, hey, we want to find a spot where we can have these things where it doesn't have to be on Route 6, because that's
Right.
prime real estate for bigger and better things, or nicer houses or whatever, you know, like.
But I think the corridor, you know, coming down Long Hill Road, across Route 6 and down 316, right in that, you draw a circle around that spot, you
Yeah.
know, and,
but we need to do something about the zoning because that doesn't leave Route
Right.
6 otherwise. So
and that,
that's
you know,
something-
that gets back into this project that Wayne and I and Eric have worked on quite a bit, with John. I don't know who else is in that mix, Roberta, I guess, yeah, she's got a big piece of that pie. Is we're trying to, one, get the map accurate, and then two, we're gonna look at where does it make sense to, you know, change the zone so that we can do this. Right.
that's-
And if
I
there's
feel
not
like-
an action, if there's not an
Should be
action to
an
update
action.
that map, you know, that's one of the big actions that should come out of here is to relook at making sure that we got the down zone the way we want it to execute that plan.
So what's the plan on, if you are gonna move the town garage, if, up to the, you know, recycle station? What are you gonna do with that area right
Well, so I'll let Eric answer that because that's certainly at 50,000 feet, it looks like a great plan. I know money's an issue and anything else you want to say about that, Eric? Other than floodplains and
there? It's a flood-
remediation?
Yeah, I get
I
that.
mean, you gotta do environmental remediation, you got all those businesses that exist now and stuff along Route 6. That you're gonna have to take by eminent domain, if you wanna carve that whole area out and make it some sort of village district. So you're gonna throw out Dubois, you're gonna throw out the post office. I assume you'll keep the transit station where it's at. And you're gonna throw out those other two houses there, take them all by eminent domain, if you're really serious about that. You gotta relocate the public works garage. That's a $6 million, $8 million hit to the town. I don't know how you're planning on getting people to agree to that. I think that's about zero chance. Which was my objection when LADA proposed that plan in the first place. Now 15 years ago. Is it all doable? Yeah, there's nothing physically that you couldn't do. Probably you'd end up doing brownfield remediation for public works, probably more likely for the garage that's there, cause I know when that was Marty's service station, he dumped all his waste oil down the back hill behind the facility, so I'm sure that whole thing is contaminated.
Yeah.
You know, could it be done? Yeah, but most of that's in the 100-year floodplain, so what kind of things are you gonna put in there?
number one. Two, it's a fairly ecologically sensitive area. Because you do have a threatened turtle species, you have a threatened snake species, and you have a threatened bat species. All located right there, so it's possible, but there's an enormous number of environmental constraints. And then obviously huge financial constraints,
So
so.
I guess my question is if, and I don't know if you guys are planning on moving that garage somewhere else. If you're not, that's great, but if you are, I'm more for restoring it to its natural, like, kind of like, more like a park kind of environment versus developing it and taking people's property. So, I mean, that's, I thought that there were some plans moving.
Well,
around,
you
but
could do,
if not,
you could do a
I
lot
get
of
it.
things there. You could build some kind of, dense housing. As dense as we can do over there, it's, really nice location by the Hot River and all that. Close to the church, the library and all that, easy trip across the street to come down to this area here.
I'm certainly a small professional thing, something in there would
Yeah,
make
all that
sense,
kind of
but-
stuff, but
I mean, even developing into like a park, because the
If-
river's right there, we have nice.
if money was no issue, that'd be a great plan. But, more and more I see money is a big issue, and I don't see, us ever getting there.
The plan of conservation and development is a decent place for big ideas.
Yeah,
Whether or
it
not
is.
they're
is.
immediately
So,
realistic.
I won't say we shouldn't put it there. That is a big idea, and it's a good idea. Is it an achievable idea? Yeah, I don't know about that one. But
I guess.
And you could talk about the former golf property on the
Yeah.
north side of,
Yep,
the north side of the river that connects Long Hill and Bunker Hill.
and
There's
that's,
what we call that Stover property, since
Right.
he's the guy that owned these
Okay.
days.
anyhow,
Yes, you can,
Yeah.
you can dream, at least, seems like this kind of a plan here is a place where you put some of your dreams, and then eventually maybe you'll get somebody that can do it. I remember in West Hartford, when I was living there was 2 car dealerships that were in this big area below Main Street, and it was just, don't be looking, and there wasn't much of anything going on. Developer came in and built that whole Blueback Square area
Mhm.
with all the apartments and the offices and the restaurants and all sorts of things. And you wouldn't believe they could have put something like that in there, but they
Yeah.
did.
and
So if you get the right person someday,
that's why I did make the
Okay.
comment that we should strike that one,
Yeah.
I think, it's a grand vision. I don't know if it's an achievable goal.
it may not be achievable
Yeah.
now, but maybe someday.
Keeping Andover beautiful is also important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Restoring that area, it's an eyesore to me,
Yeah,
driving by there.
I know
At the
it.
time, but it's expensive, I get it,
Yeah,
it is, makes sense what Eric said.
Have you ever seen a public works garage that looked pretty?
Yeah. Maybe,
Alright,
this is an old one, I get it, it's just been like.
Glastonbury probably has a nice looking. Yeah, challenges and opportunities. There is a need to pursue options for maintaining business in town, rather than make them needing to relocate due to lack of sufficient space. I strongly agree with that, and, I think our zoning regs, would allow that to happen. Says the desire points to real need to create additional industrial and commercial land limitation of building sizes within the B zone could be a hindrance to growing industries, forcing them to look for space outside town. I disagree. I think we do have space. I think we have it zoned. I think we can change zoning if we need to. But I think there's property available right now. Problem is, nobody's coming in to develop them.
Who talks to these developers, by the way, do we do? Tony, or?
There are 2 prime pieces right out of 6.
Yeah, that would be.
Just sitting there.
That would be an Elaine question, and I know there's a goal to do that, whether or not we haven't got there yet. Again, you gotta have,
There's a lot of stuff going on that I'm not the person to talk to about.
Okay.
I mean,
Elaine, you got anything you wanna add to that, at this point?
Certainly, it's funny because I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I'm in an EDC meeting tonight. Because I'm just listening to the conversations that you guys are having. And all these ideas and that is what our meetings are like. That's what we discuss. We do have, Beata Godomsky is a realtor. I also am a realtor. She has discussions regularly with developers. So all we've been looking forward to is having the POCD to support our continuing to discuss with developers things that we need and to go ahead and show that you see our next 10-year plan basically is supporting this kind of idea.
Okay.
So this is what we like. So that's, so it all goes hand in hand. But that is the thing that we are constantly looking at. We definitely would like those particular spots to have similar things that we've been talking about. The incubator, the little larger space buildings so that our dance studio can just move across the street over there. Things like that. So we're constantly doing that, but if we have an idea of what how town would like to see, then that's when we can show the developers, this is what the town is really interested in seeing happen, over the next 10 years. So that's, it all goes hand in hand. Yeah, it does get frustrating talking about this stuff because we're talking pie in the sky all the time. But at the same time, trying to figure out where we can get the rubber to meet the road and actually have something happening to these properties that we don't own as a town.
Right.
Yeah, first thing comes to mind is you guys should just have a small little fair for the residents and have some posters made and stuff like that. Like, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you guys think? Give us some feedback. And then we can take that to the developers, invite them to a little charade, and say, look what we can offer you guys if you come in here. This is what the residents want. We have these are all the members. Present it that way.
Yeah.
And
that is something that happened 15 years ago with the LADA plan that came out, and it talked about the village node, which is why we're all talking about the village node, because it came out of that whole study. And this vision of, moving the public works garage out of that area so we can go ahead and develop along the river there, and have mixed use things going on in that little area, are all stemmed from that idea. And I know when I was on that commission, it was, we were working with Bolton and Coventry and Andover and Columbia, the 4 towns together along the Route 6 corridor. And that information is still out there. But every once in a while we see that, that was a pretty good plan. Let's keep a vision of that whole village node idea, that if we had all the money in the world, this is what we would like to see. And that's why, and it still peppers our conversations today. And we don't want to lose sight of them. So we definitely want to continue on with the conversations, because eventually ideas turn into something.
Right.
Okay, I'm ready to go to page 6. My page 6, mine's probably off a little bit, but right down below that 8-2 chart, there's a paragraph and it talks about, even if the commission is not interested in a village district, it should consider creating a mixed-use zone for the area around Long Hill intersection of perhaps other areas. Mixed-use development could spur the creation of ground floor commercial space while allowing building owners to create rental units on upper floors, helping to stabilize buildings' profitability. I couldn't agree more. And our regulations allow it. And so, and again, maybe I'm looking at it from a tainted lens on the other side of the object from EDC, but it looks like you're looking for the planning and zoning commission to maybe change the regulations. And I think the regulations are in place, ready to go. We just need somebody to come in and work with us about doing something.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree, Jed. Yeah, I'm shifting a lot of this language to be more about promoting and
Yeah.
applying the mixed use regs rather than creation, obviously. Whoops, I accidentally muted you. Sorry, I meant to mute myself. I muted you guys. Wh-
There we go.
All right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
can hear
Sorry
me
about
now?
that. Yeah, I got you.
So-
Sorry about that.
I think the one thing you could consider, and it's something we considered back when we did the original mixed-use floating zone, was to say, okay, it's not gonna be a floating zone anymore, we're gonna apply it right from the beginning for this area and this area and this area. And just set it in stone and make that zone change now. The problem is that changes the things that people can do now in that zone to something new.
Yeah.
So you're gonna make some people really unhappy with that, whereas now with it as a floating zone, any applicant that comes to you with a piece of property that is within the area encompassed potentially by the floating zone can say, hey, rezone me to a mixed-use zone. Here's the site plan, here's the site master plan, boom, commission says, yeah, that looks great. Now it's zoned, so.
And maybe the action here is we need to work with the Economic Development Commission to explain with that, how that mixed zone works. You know, I've listened to Eric talk about it for 5 years now, and the light bulb is finally starting to come on just a little bit. And so it doesn't surprise me that when people, you know, aren't using the regs all the time, that it doesn't make a lot of sense on how that's supposed to go. But I think the regulations are there, we just need to.
The regulations are there, and the way I understand it is that the floating mixed use zones really just apply to Route 6. Am I mistaken on that, Eric? I mean, that could go anywhere. It could be anywhere in town?
Technically.
No, no,
That's
it
why-
was originally designed to sit over pretty much the entire Route
Right.
6
And
corridor.
then when I came back to planning and zoning now and started going back to EDC, what we realized quickly is that those areas are shrinking because of the 100-year floodplains increasing, number one. Number two, we have higher standards for environmental awareness and trying to keep the areas clean. So like, we're looking to pull in, you know, developers, but where they can do what we have proposed is gonna be great in our town. Those areas have shrunk, number one. Number two, they're shrinking faster and faster. So that's why it's not pressure, but the directive that we kind of focused on this time is we need to really nail it down. Not like you can only do it here, but these are really the best spots so that the developers know as the properties come up for sale, or if the town someday buys properties, et cetera, or uses their own property, that we can say, all right, yeah, these are the best spots. Because we don't want to put something way on the edge of town that's gonna be, we want it to be linked to the town center and all the walkable trail, and you know, but we don't want to be, you know, so it's a weird balance, in my opinion. And it's hard to explain to developers, oh, well, yeah, this is what we want, but we don't know where you put it, you know,
Right, we should have that.
that's, yeah, we gotta really
But I
start
think, I
focusing.
think you're corrected, I even have it highlighted, designated business or industrial.
Yeah, at this particular moment, but we're just proposing it like, hey, maybe we can look into this, like, find the best spots and. go.
And that's, again, part of that action, to take a look at the map, where do we want
Right,
to have business zone so that we can do that, better.
right.
I don't know, maybe you could put on the map some sort of reference to mixed-use zone as possible in business and industrial zones. How much outreach is done to, I don't know, organizations or, you know, professional organizations that do this sort of stuff, build these things, create these senior housing developments? Do they even know that, hey, we're sitting right here, we're 30 minutes from Hartford? Probably don't know.
No, I mean, to do that, you have to do what Coventry did years ago, which is hire an economic development person, you know, and have them go out and pound the pavement, trying to bring business into town.
Right.
And we've never, you know, we as a town have always liked the idea of economic development. But think about it, our Economic Development Commission budget, what is it up to now? $1,000 a year for economic development? 13 what?
Well, yeah, we have
No.
$1,000, but we did get a kick to go ahead and pay for the second Welcome to Andover sign this year.
Oh, yeah, that's just, that was a single allocation for a sign.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's something that the town has always wanted to pay lip service to, but the town has never wanted to fund, and that's.
Okay,
That's the dilemma.
so the grand vision out there, at least where I thought, you know, probably 2 years ago, Elaine and I went to Board of Selectmen and made the pitch for a combined town planner, economic development coordinator. And didn't get rave reviews. We didn't get tomatoes thrown at us, but finances were not all that great. But we did, through the plan of conservation and development action, get a town planner.
Yeah.
Now, wouldn't it be great if when the plan of conservation and development gets done, we can expand John's role to focus more on economic development and still keep him here? I think that would be a wonderful achievement of what we set out to do a couple of years ago, and we might be able to actually bring that to fruition without anybody even know it happened.
That would be great.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yep.
Yep. So that's what I think our plan, that's what we kind of need to get, you know, heading towards, as long as John would be amenable to that, but that's always been kind of my dream to expand that way. And once we got done with P O C D, to expand into doing more of the economic development kind of stuff with us.
Yeah. Well, then, yeah, once we've written the plan, it's time to implement it.
Yep. No.
So you could always try and lean on our state representative and state senator to slip something into the budget implementer. That's how things get done in Hartford.
Okay, yep. Not smart enough to do that, not smart enough to know about that. I do know that it takes more outreach. And I do know that Elaine is already way overextended. And so that's not a doable do, you know, to criticize the fact that that hasn't actually come to fruition yet. You know, that's not the intention here. But I do think that with John's help, maybe, you know, next year we could start dabbling in some of that stuff and maybe get somebody to bring something here. Yeah, that would be good. And I don't care, well, I think the mixed use would be great with, you know, the places for the industrial park and office building down below and housing up on top. There are the aims and objectives for Andover's grand list. Supporting cottage industries by allowing types of development that they require is important. And again, I left asking, what support do they need? I think from a zoning perspective, I don't know what we would need to do there. You know, cottage industries are allowed, home businesses are allowed, and we don't have places for them to grow into yet. We need to somehow get those here. But I don't think there's a planning and zoning piece of that I'm aware of. Then, the next paragraph down there, town should consider, John's squeaking on it now, the creation of larger mixed-use buildings to encourage creation of vacant airspace, all that, including contract. I don't know who has the action to do that, but I think our regulations, support getting that done. And my last comment is on the action items, we need to identify who's got the lead for each of those things. 'Cause
Right, yeah,
otherwise, when we come to the next 10 years, we'll go back and look at that list. And we'll say, oh, I thought you were doing that, and, so we need to make
Right,
sure
so-
that we know who.
Yeah, sorry, Jed. Yeah, no, so at the end of this process, we will have an implementation matrix that will add those details to each of the implementation items, each of the action items. So that is planned. We will have that.
So again, my comments are not to say that the write-up was bad, it's very good, as Elaine and Patrick both said, we finally got all these things written down on paper, which I think is great. I was trying to look at it, and it seemed like it was thinking that planning and zoning may have a big part of why these things aren't happening. I'm not sure that that's true, but if there are things where we need something different, and maybe, placing the mixed-use floating zone, so it's not floating anymore, it's a plunk someplace, maybe that's something we need to do. Your comment about the shrinking thing because of the floodplains growing, yeah, good one, I hadn't considered that. But I do think it's very important, and but I did think that, I pushed back on a couple of things, and that's probably to be expected, because I'm looking at it from the other side that economic development is looking at it from. So not to be critical, trying to be collaborative, trying to provide some good constructive feedback to get a good product there. And that was the end of my comments.
That's great.
I
Thank
had
you,
one
Jed.
comment
That's great.
reaction, I don't know. So I will send you the draft that I wrote up with all my little comments in it, John, just so you can kind of, and I'm certainly willing to accept pushback on any of those comments. I just wanted to provide what I thought as I was reading through the thing here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's why we do this.
And so I guess that, what's the next step here? Are you gonna do another tweak on it, just based on what you heard tonight? And,
Yep.
Let us-
So yeah, that's exactly right. We'll make these edits over the next couple of weeks. So if someone had some comments that they didn't get to, or your thoughts, Jed, prompted someone else to have some considerations, if you could forward those to me, ideally in the next week or so, we'll make edits and distribute it again. But what we will propose to do is we've done a bunch of discussion about housing over the last couple of years and have an existing affordable housing plan. So we will use those to draft up a housing chapter for the next for in advance of the next planning and zoning meeting, in addition to making edits as discussed to this chapter.
okay,
John, do you have any feelings based on the study that finally came out on each municipality's share, quote unquote, of affordable housing, whether that's actually gonna get through the legislature?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think the final fair share report, which is certainly not anywhere close to being a law, was released, I believe, yesterday, and I haven't gone through it yet, I'll be honest. I do think that the fair share requirement that potentially converting the affordable housing plan that towns already have to do into something like a fair share plan has a puncher's chance this year. I have it on decent authority that the majority leader is putting together sort of an omnibus housing bill that I think fair share will be included in. I do think that provision will probably get the most objection and be the subject of the most horse trading and debate on the legislative floor. But I think it's got a puncher's chance, which would create a whole new series of targets for every town to incorporate into their affordable housing plan.
So just so that everybody knows that their targets, depending on which formula you use to generate them for Andover, is the addition of somewhere between 226 and 702 new affordable housing units in the town of Andover. And considering we only have 1,200 housing units now, I don't think that's a reasonably attainable goal.
That's right after we moved the parking garage.
Public Works at 96.
Right?
And again, so but to be clear, what the legislation states, the draft legislation, is that the only thing that the town actually needs to do is create the regulatory environment and conditions that would enable it. It doesn't require the town to build anything. So it's more about removing obstacles. And as Jed said, the town has already, done a fair bit of regulatory changes that would enable a variety of development to happen. So, the market, the town can only do so much. The market needs to do most of it. So, that is, again, it's not about necessarily building things. It's about sort of preparing the regulatory environment to allow for building things. But yeah, I think some of the numbers are a little bit unrealistic given market conditions.
Yeah, I think 700 new affordable housing units in the town of Andover would be problematic.
Yep.
Yeah, probably put my house up for sale and move.
Anything else, Eric? We didn't call on you specifically. You've been chiming in a little bit along the way here. Anything else you wanted to share on the EDC chapter there?
No, I think you've hit on most of the parts. I mean, the only thing I want to keep is that I always think of economic development as the primary goal is to get the businesses and services that Andover residents want that are that you can do at a smaller scale, which the population can support into Andover. And I think of economic development as much for convenience and for driving community as I do for reducing the mill rate, because when you really look at the quantity and size of businesses it would take to make a measurable difference in the mill rate, you would really alter the character of Andover and not necessarily in a good way. So I don't think that that's an attainable goal. I mean, it sounds great. I mean, I'd love to pay less taxes too. I'm sure all of us do. But I think it's more important to be able to have the services that you want locally. And that should really be kind of the driving goal. At least that's my opinion.
Okay, thanks, Eric. John, did you have anything on the conservation chapter update?
No, we've been getting feedback from the Conservation Commission, and I have sort of a markup version that we're discussing back and forth. So we should have a sort of a agreed draft shortly.
Okay. I'm gonna spend just a couple of minutes. The next item is discussion of bylaws changes, and there is some.
I'm gonna check out, guys.
Oh, thanks, yeah.
Thank
I'm
you
sure
so
weren't able
much.
to see.
This
Thanks,
was
Elaine.
great.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, bye-bye.
To be perfectly honest, I'm gonna check out of that discussion.
Okay, yeah, you don't care about the bylaws too much.
No.
Thanks for coming, Eric.
Cheers. Thanks for all your hard work you're doing.
Later.
Thanks, Eric. Have a good one.
John, hopefully you can display the bylaws with Mark Branch's comments. And page one looks pretty easy. Nothing there, okay. Page two. And so Mark Branch's comments don't show up there. He had, when we're talking about what to do with vacancies, he said, is this per the ordinance? If not, we have to follow the ordinance. And it was sort of by the ordinance, but I did change it. I took the words directly out of the ordinance. Well, not the ordinance, it's out of the charter. There was nothing in the ordinance there. So that, I updated the words to make it reflect exactly what's in the town charter with, as far as replacing people with vacancies there.
Can you see the full markup now, Jed?
Yeah, we can, yep. It's small enough that probably nobody can read it, but that's okay. It reminds me to talk about what I want to say and not drag it out all night there. The next comment that Mark had was about the chairperson and the vice chairperson being a commission member. And I left it the way it was. I thought it was clear enough. Obviously, an alternate shouldn't be the commission chair because he's not gonna be seated all the time. And you gotta be seated all the time to be the chair, and so that makes it, a regular member there. Well, I guess looking at your screen, and I did include the word regular just to remove any doubt there. So
Yep, you did.
I've got, maybe I don't have the most recent thing where what I checked out, but anyhow, we'll press on, and they're all pretty easy comments here. The next comment that Mark Branch had was at the bottom of the last page. It talked about the board clerk being an employee of the town, and he said, it doesn't have to be. And so, so that was an original one. It's gonna be the land use clerk doesn't have to be an employee of the town. So we crossed out the board clerk has to be a salaried employee of the town because she is not. And that's that. So on to the next one, land use department administrative assistant. Mark asked, well, the board clerk's not a employee of the town, outsourced thing. How about the land use administrative assistant? Could be, not necessarily so, not necessarily the best idea, but does not have to be an employee of the town. So I just eliminated those words there. A couple of change Mark made, crossed out except put process in there. I don't think he had anything for shattering on any of the next things there. In section 3, the zoning enforcement officer. Again, Mark's comment was he doesn't have to be an employee of the town. He could be John provides CEO responsibility for a couple of towns. So we could be doing that if we wanted. I like having Wayne an employee of the town, but not required. And so we chose to make it so that it didn't have to be that way. And that's it on that page. Let's see. Okay, yep, and, Mark's comment was, that we should be consistent about saying commission. Sometimes we were using PCC in there, just be consistent and, say commission throughout. Don't think anything else there. Moving down to election of officers. He said, you try to make it a little more clear whether or not you're talking entire membership or just the regular, commission members, and so I added the word, entire in there. Moving down. I'm on page 6 now. Section 4, we tweaked that just a little bit to be, to talk about when you can deliberate following a public hearing and, that sort of thing. The, section 5, we used to say if you missed meetings for reasons other than illness, we were gonna do away, we changed it to say unexcused absence. There could be a lot of personal family reasons that somebody would be unable to make the meetings, and so that makes that just a little bit clearer. Section 10, he said that Robert's Rules of Order is never designed for government agencies and contain provisions that are flatly illegal. You can be guided by them, but don't ever want to be governed by them. And so we put Robert's Rules of Order shall be used as a guide. Moving down to the next page, the minutes. Oh, so on section 6, how, I forget what we used to have in there, but we talked about updating the minutes, and they would be made on the copy that's filed with the town clerk and initialed by the secretary, and a bunch of stuff that we don't do. What we do is when we approve the minutes, it's the changes to the minutes are noted in the following month. So when you look at minutes, you look for when they're approved to see if there are any changes to it. And that's the process that the town uses. And that's what I tried to reflect in there. I think, so Mark added a new section, new article 19, conflict with applicable law. He put some new boilerplate in there. That, say that our bylaws can't change the state statutes. State statutes supersede anything that we do here. And then on the amendments, the changes, just to make it clear that the entire voting membership, everybody votes on changes to the bylaws. And I think that's that's changed from the last time we went through here. I would make a motion to approve the bylaws as amended.
Second.
And seconds, any discussion on the bylaws? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Ann? Leanne?
Aye.
Andreas?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well, so the motion passes 5-0-0. But the majority of the entire commission is 5 members, so we got just enough members to pass the changes. Thank you. You said we're not getting anything done. Correspondence, Wayne, anything you wanna talk about there? Nope, okay. Administrative reports, anything you wanna talk about there, zoning agent wise?
Just real quick, I approved well, I haven't approved, I asked for more information. Mobile station is gonna, wants to upgrade the fascia sign over on the canopy.
So the mobile station is the one down at 316.
Yeah.
Okay, you should carefully look at the sign regs because
I've passed along the sign regs to the people who wanted to.
Okay,
Just, some back and forth going on.
because every window is completely signed over as you drive by there.
Understood that, of the building.
Yeah.
This is for the facade itself.
I got
For
you.
the,
You know,
canopy
if they're
itself.
gonna change what they're doing, they ought to comply with the regs.
I'm not sure that the company that. I am sure the company that's asking for this change is not the company that controls the rest of that, or has anything to do with it. It's just a company that's gonna fix the canopy or work on the canopy.
Okay, all I can tell you is, I think they have exceeded the maximum number of signs by,
Well, are we talking the Shell gas station or the mobile?
Mobile.
that one, okay, I'm in the wrong one, I said Shell, the 316 is the one.
That's the Shell.
Extra Mart, okay, yeah, I think Extra Mart and Shell. And I didn't hear Extra Mart, so, okay, yeah, they're not the big offenders,
Yeah.
actually, they tried to comply, they put a bunch of these feather signs up one year, and they took them down because, they exceeded, okay, yeah. It's the Shell station I'm not happy with their signs.
Minor thing, a deck on Shoddy Mill Road, that was approved. There was no issues with that. Today, I denied an application, to construct an addition with a garage underneath, that was proposed for a 325 Lake Road. It did not meet the, side yard requirements,
Okay.
so.
What is going on with, Long Hill, that construction house? I think it's
Way
across from Bear Swamp.
across from, Stonehouse?
Yeah, what's going on over there?
It's just-
They don't have do they need a certification of occupancy there? Somebody's living there, I know for sure.
That would be a building inspector question, and that has been. Building inspector knows of that situation, so
Yeah, there's people living there.
the answer is. From the building inspector is that they're living in the house, that house was never condemned or. Was never deemed unfit for occupation. And you can live in a house while you are renovating it.
Okay. Yeah, because they consistently, I know they cleaned up today, but have garbage everywhere.
I don't want to speak for the building inspector.
Yeah.
I'm just relaying the information that I got.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for the building inspector.
Okay, but as far as the cleanup in that, you've been involved in that?
I haven't, Jim has, but I drive by it.
Yeah, they're both, Bill and I both were complaining, because the cleanup and the mess comes and it goes all over the place, the garbage.
Now, they have a dumpster out there?
No, they don't.
It
It comes and goes.
from my perspective,
I don't have a dumpster. They're supposed to have a dumpster. No, they don't have a dumpster.
no, there used to be a dumpster there, actually, there were several dumpsters, over time, no more. But as of right now, I don't see a huge issue with it right now.
They've been cleaning up little by little, but it's the cleanup and it's a mess and it's just
Yeah,
a
it goes
huge
up
eyesore.
and down, garbage bags collect, and then
Are we fixing the guardrail there, damaged by the trees?
it's,
Is that something that
imagine Public Works is doing
Public
that.
Works are doing?
Well, they cut the trees down. Public Works was there doing that.
And I know that we had our budget cut on construction, but Skinner Road is absolute mess. Have we told paving it, or that's not us, or that's more,
You missed your chance to ask the
yeah.
right guy.
I know.
Yeah.
I know we got some money back from the state, but
Yep. No, that would be an Eric question.
so paving roads is not part of our
No,
Public Works.
public works.
I think that it's on a list to get some work done this year, if I remember right.
We've always got a list of roads.
Yeah, I
Disaster,
know.
disaster, Skinner.
But, last select meeting that he gave a list quickly of all the different roads that are up for work this summer, and I think that was on one of those. They're supposed to be working on this summer.
Great. They do a great job.
Sorry,
Anything
that's
else?
the end of my report.
Okay, inland wetlands, the inland wetlands meeting was again canceled, so I got no report there. Town planner, John?
I don't have anything further. I was gonna mention the potential legislation for fair share, but it's still pending.
Yeah, fair share doesn't sound very fair.
No,
I guess we'll see what comes out.
I probably should have added that all last week I was at Casio training. And I've yet to find out whether I passed the test,
Okay, yeah.
so.
Oh, and yeah, so,
Casio is the Connecticut Association of Zoning Enforcement Officials. It's required training for people in my position.
I passed the clear. I took it. I sent you a copy.
okay, yeah, I was gonna mention that, but most of the people I haven't heard from are not here tonight, so we won't talk about the required biannual training there. Public speak, well, did Catherine Hutchinson finally drop off when it was time for her? I guess I don't see her here anymore. Maybe we've got no more public now, okay? Moving on to approval of the minutes.
Jed,
Yes,
did we cover the new business items?
we did. Yep, they were quick. All we did was we scheduled, well, I gave Jim a certificate. Oops, new business. We set the public hearing for the home occupation for next month prior to the meeting. We're going to do the text amendment change public hearing next month prior to the meeting. And then the special permits to actually do things out at Fitch Farm will be the month after that in July. So that's what we did on the new business.
Okay, I thought I could hear all of what you were doing before, and I thought what you were doing was moving the agenda items around. So maybe I just misunderstood when we were trying to make sure that we could all hear each other, because I thought I could hear you the whole time, but, okay.
And,
So you're
well, we
saying
went through
we're all
that new
set.
business pretty quickly. But,
Okay.
yeah. So next up is approval of the minutes from April 15th. And I will make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 15th planning and zoning meeting.
One second.
And seconds, thank you. Any discussion on those other than Andreas's last name spelled Halidis for the record? That was the only item I saw reading through the minutes.
Halidis.
HALIDIS. D is David, IS as Sam.
So hearing no other comments on the minutes, I make a motion to approve the minutes as amended to put the correct spelling of Halidis into the minutes. And that's it.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Leanne. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for vote. Ann?
Aye.
Leanne?
Aye.
Andreas?
Aye.
Patrick? Aye. And I vote aye as well. That motion passes 500. Next meeting, June 17th. That'll start out with, 2 public hearings. And we'll go into, regular meeting, which will have some more P O C D stuff, and, again, we'll head on down the road, on all that, but, we're not too bad, we'll get out of here by 9:30 tonight. Any other discussion? Gone, I make a motion to adjourn at 9:19 PM. And seconds, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes 5-0-0. Thank you, everybody, for attending.